100%. Yeah, that worked, right?
Yeah, it works. Sorry.
Okay, great.
I put it
I
away
found
because I didn't want to say anything, but now here I am.
Yeah, gotcha.
Nope.
I found another setting that turned it on, so we're good. Ciao, we're good here. Thanks. Okay, everyone, thanks for coming to Engineering Office Hours. In the stage chat, I put a Zoom link in case we're going to share screens. I'm not exactly sure how this is going to go. This is our first time doing Engineering Office Hours, so we're really just going to start by opening it up to the community to start. I think we've got some other. Kevin is up here. We may do some talking about Unchained that could be helpful. And then I was just in a meeting with a bunch of folks who are not back here yet about the plan for wallets and wallet support in V2. So possible we could go over some of that just at a conversational level. So there's no developed presentations or refined thoughts. That's not the idea for these engineering office hours. This is really all discussion, conversational. I guess maybe there's a disclaimer. Don't take anything that's said here as any kind of statement of intent of the engineering workstream of the DAO. So, yes, anybody
Real
have?
quick, Josh.
Yeah, please, Kevin.
That link that you shared in stage chat looks like a Google Docs spreadsheet and not a Zoom for me.
It sure does. Oh my gosh. Yeah, just the little things, you know? Let me see. This doesn't. I'm definitely down it, huh? Zoom link for engineering. There we go. Now it's a Zoom link. Goodness. All right. Okay, people are joining. We're not sharing anything yet. That's all right. But so yeah, does anybody have any questions for anybody for engineering in general about or suggestions, thoughts, anything at all is fair game. No, okay, that's all right. Want to check. Let's see.
There's a couple of hands, Josh.
Yeah, there are. Okay. Yeah, there are. Never was. I've invited Seth. I've invited. So yeah, come on up. And while that's happening, can I ask maybe like Theobald or TechnoJack, can you just jump into the E1 all access channel, which is that wallet discussion, and just let them know let them know we're starting to take questions. Theobald, TechnoJack, Parker, anybody? Okay. Never was. You were up here first. What? Please.
Hey, Josh, I just wanted to really commend you and your team. You guys are really going above and beyond with the daily stand-ups. All the events where you're allowing people to code share and get in on one-on-ones with everyone. And I just feel that you guys are being very proactive and available to anyone and everyone that wants to see how things are working and getting involved. And truly commendable. Out of the teams, this is just starting, and this is a very large learning curve for everyone. But I do notice that, and would really like to commend you guys and all the effort that you're putting forward. And now, with obviously doing something like this with office hours and giving another opportunity for everyone to really get a better understanding and be involved. So thanks again.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate the vote of confidence and the support there, and thanks for attending a lot of these things and staying on top. That's what really keeps us going is seeing folks like you and 420 Coop and Seth, Gray Machine that are just keep coming around. I see Ron, I see him around a lot too. So that's really what makes us want to keep doing this, is just trying to prime the pump and get the collective effort going. And we've got some external contributions into our code bases, which is really great. And if anybody has any feedback about how we could do that better, that's really one of our goals, is driving the open source community effort. So thanks for the words, and also just want to invite any feedback about how we can do it better. And Seth.
Oh, wish granted.
Yeah. Okay, great.
So I know that you guys have been really busy being pulled in multiple directions, especially since you're the biggest work stream and will be for the foreseeable future. But my concern as a contributor is something like this. You know, I don't have explicit training in exactly the stuff you guys are using, and I've never worked in a project this big or complex. So I feel like to be a contributor, I need a certain amount of training in not in programming, generally, just how to become an effective contributor in the specific systems you guys are using. So, for example, for me, the hardest thing is just breaking the problem down, right? Because it's such a massive code base. So I guess my question is, how does someone like me, like, what's the middle steps for someone like me to become a reputable contributor?
Right. Good question. Well, I think it's going to be a little bit on a unique case by case basis. So like when you say someone like you, I think we would even have to just start talking about you specifically. And so we can dig in that just a little bit, but then I'll want it, and then maybe this is something, if there's no other more general questions, we could return to you here later during these office hours. But like at the first, have you followed the READMEs? Do you have the projects running locally?
I have managed to get Unchained running locally. I haven't done the web thing yet. So
Yeah.
there have been a lot of meetings in the past week or two.
Yeah, right. No, and that's a good start if you have it running locally. Unchained, we opened that up open source pretty early in its life cycle, right? And I know that when you look at like I know you've been really interested in Pirate Chain, right? And there's really, I don't think there's anybody of any level that could right now come in, get Unchained running locally, and figure out how to add Pirate Chain support into Unchained, right? We just currently have support for Ethereum. We haven't even completed the work for Bitcoin yet. So thinking like into more complex chains like that, it's really just not, the code base is not ready for that yet. And I would, Kevin or Adam, DeFi, if any of you have anything to add about that, please do. But that would be what I would say, is that it wouldn't even matter if you were like the best coder in the world right now. If we're specifically talking about adding a new chain with privacy complexities like private chain, that'd be a pretty tall, that's a pretty tall order right now.
Yes.
Yeah, I would think, get up to speed, get things running. Like you mentioned, you have Unchained running. And then we're here mountain time pretty much all day. And we've been trying to work in the public channels as much as possible. Most of the time when I look, we're in like one of the all access, or at least the chat type voice room. I would just invite you and everyone at large to come and hang out and listen and ask questions, and come to stand up. You can pull tickets. We can pair people with you to get you off the ground, just like we would internally in the past as we hire new people. Like no one's gonna just hit the ground and know everything and be able to start independently working tickets. It's really an incremental, you gain the knowledge. There isn't really a line in the sand, but suddenly one day you're able to go off and start building features, solving issues, on your own without being paired up. But it's definitely expected that there's a fair amount of ramp up time depending on your existing knowledge of the crypto domain.
Okay. So initially, what I was thinking is something along the lines of taking bounties one at a time until I sort of finagle my way into
Yep.
a job. But my understanding from Gitcoin is that there's only been like 2 bounties.
Yeah, that's like just getting going. It's something,
Right.
we had to kind of figure out the process and how to administer it. And then we need to find tasks that are reasonable for people that are newer to the project to work on. So those are coming, and that definitely is another good path to take. And we'd be happy to have someone pair with you on a specific bounty as you get going to answer questions and make sure you're sort of setting off armed with the tools you need.
All right. That is exactly the kind of thing that I'm looking for, and I really appreciate it.
And I would.
Seth,
go
in
ahead.
terms of like specific tickets and stuff, if you're available at 10 a.m. Mountain, we go over the entire kind of open source engineering project board. So that includes Unchained, the new web, the new airdrop stuff. So and after that stand up, the Unchained guys are usually in voice channels and available to answer questions, or you can just shadow like specific stuff that they're working on.
All right. I'll look into that.
I think Highlander, did you have something to say here too?
Yeah, so my name's Highlander. I've been adding assets to ShapeShift for almost 4 years. If we want to talk a little bit technical about adding assets, Unchained is not the best place to start. DevOps can be very complicated. These nodes can be really rough. But at the end of the day, key management is where this is. And very specifically, what we're looking for is a JavaScript SDK for key management, preferably something offline. So when I actually looked around Pirate Chain a little bit, they have a lot of C++ bindings, and they have like a C++ CLI and their wallet end. I have not found much of like a JavaScript SDK for them. Anybody that would build a web wallet for Pirate Chain would need to do this. They would need a front end client SDK. So specifically, that's where we would want to start. Is HD Wallet is the best place for any project to start integrating themselves to ShapeShift. Web and Unchained are not the best. The best is to look at HD Wallet and to see if we can get integration tests of what these transactions look like. And there is adding an asset guide to HD Wallet specifically. I'd love to walk people through it. I would love to get more people working on HD Wallet as a whole and starting to get some bounties on adding things to HD Wallet. But that is the very first place that of adding an asset to the platform needs to begin is there. The rest of the stuff is more ShapeShift specific, and we can start working towards it more internally. But once it's in HD Wallet, things move a lot faster.
Thanks, Highlander. And the last thing I want to say on this subject, and this is for you, Seth, and anyone else who might be interested, who's interested in contributing, is that even if you don't see a posted bounty, if you have an idea of something you can do that could be worth a bounty, bring it, hop into one of the channels down there in the engineering work stream and chat with some engineers about it, or post the idea in one of the Discord text channels. The engineering public chat is a good place to start. And we can very open to something becoming a bounty that we hadn't yet thought of, or we're just not quite there yet, but if you feel something that you'd be interested in doing and want to jump on it, proactively suggest it or ask about it, and let's see where that conversation goes.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But to me, it's much easier to sort of update a system than it is to add something new.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah. True.
for a beginner like me, I'm just trying to provide value in ways where I can and increase my skill set. That's really where I want to put my time and energy right now.
Cool.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Seth. Let's see. Gray Machine, I've invited you to speak. And anybody else, please raise your hand and we'll get you on up. Hey there.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. It still says accept. I was sitting here clicking it and
Nope, we got you. You're here.
oh, which threw off my train of thought. Okay, so I'm kind of, I was a little bit hesitant to jump into this question now, but it seems that we're kind of lightly touching it. So I just want to kind of ask a broad level question. I'm not an engineer. I do some coding, but my background is mostly in design and in product management.
Yeah.
I see a lot of engineering efforts, and a lot of the engineering work is kind of siloed within engineering. And as I hear talk about, how do I, as an, as a potential engineer wanting to come in and go through some sort of onboarding process and get involved, I'm wondering where we start to link together engineering efforts and product design, UX, product management, and project management. I'm guessing a lot of this is happening internally within ShapeShift. The private company and your roadmaps are kind of moving forward, and these tickets, I guess, are coming through that. But I don't see a whole lot in terms of as this becomes basically a community-driven effort of how ideas turn into features, which does require engineering, but it also requires a lot of other stuff, a lot of specs, a lot of roadmaps and other stuff that somebody like me would do. So I'm just wondering, I know this is a pretty broad question, but I'm wondering what that process is going to start to look like, because what I hear Seth saying is, I think, kind of touching on that. I mean, I'm sure this is a lot of technical detail and technical, GitHub stuff and all that. But beyond that, when somebody's like, I've got an idea, running forward with it as an engineer can be pretty difficult if you're trying to figure out how and what and who and where and what does it look like and all that. So I'm wondering if we need to start thinking about sort of integration and how product people can work with engineers to kind of move features forward, rather than just engineering squashing bugs and crossing off tickets and stuff like that.
Yeah, right. That's a good question. And yeah, we had a process, internal process, and we are working on making that a external public process. And there hasn't been a whole bunch that's really happened around that, which is basically like, how do we determine, well, if I distill your question or your comments there, it's about like our roadmap, right? How do we determine what gets on the roadmap? How does then product provide the input that it needs into the roadmap? And then how does engineering pick up the next pieces of work from the roadmap? And so all basically around the roadmap, which internally in ShapeShift Inc. has been the thing that engineering and product have discussed together, and then use that roadmap as the guide for what we build.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, can I give you one example
Sure.
of something that's popped up, right? So like there's a big exciting discussion where everybody's excited about a feature of integrating NFTs into the ShapeShift wallet, right? And I know NFTs are on a longer term roadmap, but there was like this sort of intermediate goal of like, well, let's see what we can do to just, in a very simplified process, get NFTs up on and it was kind of handed over to me, and I'm happy to take this on. But I think this is probably the first time this has happened, and as I, I'm still working through the spec and all that. But eventually, like, this is the first of probably this is going to continue happening hopefully over the coming years, right? Of people get excited about a feature and they're like, oh, who's going to take this on? And then you need an engineer. And I'm kind of getting to that point now where I'm thinking, well, how difficult is this? How many, I don't know how you work, like how many story points or whatever it is, like how
Right.
difficult it is to add a new tab. Like as I mock this stuff up in Photoshop, that's great. But then it's like, okay, what is the reality of adding a new tab, tapping into the OpenSea API and getting that to just, like the actual where the tires hit the road kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's where I would want to talk to an engineer. So once I get to that point, that's, I guess, a more of a specific rather than this, how do we move products forward? But like,
Sure. Oh,
somebody
that's
like
good.
me, who do I talk to as like engineering wise to say, what's your best guess of how long this is going to take?
Yeah, that's a good question, and certainly one that we haven't come across as far as external community members with designs wanting input
Yeah, I
from.
think I'm the first one. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to crack the egg on this. And again, there might not be a solid answer right now, but
Yeah.
I
Well,
think it's going to be an ongoing
let
thing.
me ask you a specific question about this specific example. When do you think you would be ready for some input?
Oh, within a month, I would say. I guess it depends on how many other projects are thrown at me.
Yeah.
There's been a lot coming at
Yeah.
me, but
I mean, it certainly seems like I'm also trying to think of this from a decentralized community perspective rather than a centralized, because how it would be before in ShapeShift Inc. is someone from product would probably approach me, right? And I'd talk to some people and figure out who, and it would all be kind of directed from top down. So if we want to think about like, how do we do this without the top down direction? I
guess that's kind of at the heart of what I'm asking here. Of
Yeah.
without centralized management, how
Right.
do projects get resources, the right resources, and getting people paired together and moving
Yeah.
forward?
No, I think like as far as like the roadmap and the bigger things that the core development team are going to work on, those are being handled in team discuss. We're meeting as a whole engineering work stream to discuss that. So that's one thing. There's also the possibility of work just if it's and then we're also deciding in those meetings what work could possibly be bountied, right? Could just be bountied work for the community to do, trying to make that discernment. But in this case, just thinking step by step. And the next step, within a month, you'd want some engineering input. You'd want to talk to an engineer for whatever amount of time, say 30, 60 minutes or something like that. I think at that level, you could just go to the engineering public chat channel and ask to try to do from a decentralized method. Hey, I've got these, maybe even show some examples. And then if there's an engineer on the team, and maybe at some point, hopefully at some point we get to the point where it doesn't even have to be, well, it probably will need to be a core developer who's responsible for maintaining the code base. But one of us is super excited about NFTs, right? And says, yeah, I'm willing to take out at whatever it is, some amount of time to talk about the designs of an NFT thing and spend that initial effort. I think that would be one way you could go about at least this next step. And then I'll see if there's anybody else here on stage who's has a thought about this too.
I got some thoughts, and I agree with all that, Josh. I think you're absolutely right. Like at any point, you can kind of go to these public channels and say, "Hey, I've got anything to show. I've got an idea," and get feedback. That's one of the cool things about the DAO. But I definitely have some thoughts on this, and ultimately, we'll all get to figure this out together. But we've talked a little bit about this, Josh and others, and I think that it's important. I really believe that it should still go through a work stream, and really, you, Josh, just like at ShapeShift, how when there's a new feature idea and stuff, we went to you to allocate that work. I think definitely, like you said, there'll be a core team whose priority is to work on this roadmap that the product and engineering workstream put together with the community. The community aligns on. That's kind of the main priority. But we will have the opportunity for these things to pop up. But even in that case, I do think it's important to, instead of just for anyone just going directly to engineers, for instance, to go to the workstream leader and say, here's this feature that we want to prioritize, and here's all the work for it. Can we allocate this? And even if it's the first, we should see if there is bandwidth for the engineering workstream to take this on, I think. But we could still have a situation where external developers come and do all of the development work, but that would still need to come through the engineering workstream, because at the end of the day, the engineering workstream is going to be the one who's merging the PR. If there is a bounty, we've talked about this, that the bounty, even if it's a bounty to pay out, external developers, that should still be held by the engineering workstream on Colony. And the engineering workstream basically determines when the bounty has been completed and when it can actually be paid out and when the code can be merged. And then obviously, if there was ever a situation where, let's imagine an extreme situation where a bounty actually was completed by an external development group, and for some reason the engineering workstream didn't want to merge it, and there was contention, it could always be appealed to token holders to have the final say. But as much as possible, we want to keep that on the workstream level. When it comes to like these features between creating the mockups and stuff, I also think that should happen on the product, through the product workstream. So Gray Machine, this example was one where Gray Machine had a really cool idea for this NFT stuff, and or there was like interest in him taking it on and doing some of the mockups in product management. And so product workstream saw it as a great opportunity to say, yeah, let's, we're focused on some other stuff right now. We don't really have bandwidth with our core team to take on this additional feature. Here's a great opportunity for Gray Machine, who's already showing a lot of interest in the NFT stuff, to take this on and kind of, as a pilot project. Hopefully, if this goes well, it can, Gray Machine can take on more of these types of opportunities or be available for them. But either way, it should still flow through the product workstream. And the product workstream, we should be just like at centralized ShapeShift, where sometimes we had mockups for features that didn't even get prioritized by engineers. Like our goal, I think, should just be to have a backlog of spec features and mockups ready to get built by engineers, ready to be prioritized. It's possible some of those will never end up getting prioritized, but hopefully, we're just staying a few steps ahead of engineering with products that product workstream agrees should be prioritized, and wants to allocate resources, whether it's through the core product workstream or through external contributors. Curious what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think this is like definitely one of those work in progress pieces that we're at right now and trying to figure some of these nuances out. I agree with Willie that I think if there are, even if the engineering work is like bountied out to an engineer that may not be on the core dev team, I still think that should go through the engineering work stream so that people gain reputation in Colony and whatnot. And I think, especially in the short term, there'll be the need for some. I'm not sure if I don't know if maybe assistance from a core dev team so that people can make sure they can get their code working in the right way and like sort of meeting the expectations that the dev team has set. I think the same thing on the product team. I think Gray Machine, you were like super early on this, and we didn't have the bandwidth to do this, so it was definitely like great that you were willing to take this on and whatnot. I think, there's been a couple of other conversations that have come up, and I'm trying to work through and think about a process in regards to like what makes sense about when there is someone external to the product, if it's a product specific piece or if it's designs or both. What does that process look like? Because we obviously have certain brand standards and like philosophies on what we want the UX to look like. So then how do we keep those consistent with a bunch of different contributors? Because we want all of those contributors to participate as much as possible, but we also want the user experience to still be a really great user experience.
So there's a whole bunch for you.
Like I said, I was hesitant to even ask because I know this is very early, and I'm literally, I think I'm the first person, just because I'm like just happen to be the first person to stumble through the door that is external to the organization, but works in product management specifically.
Yeah.
And So yeah, but I see this becoming a bigger thing, and I was wondering, yeah, how
Yeah, I think
we
it.
move forward with that.
I think it was a great question to bring up, and this was a great forum to bring it up in just an open discussion with a bunch of people here. So I'm really glad you brought it up. And so I think just to recap that, where the work for the actual development activity to happen, that is going to go through the work stream. And for this next step where, hey, you know, I've got some designs, I'm curious, how much work is this? Just so you can like start to understand some of what happens behind the scenes. Please feel free to throw questions into tech chats, or, you know, join one of the voice chats that you see happening throughout the day with in the engineering workstream channel group, and just toss it out, see if anyone's interested. And also just be prepared for some people, you know, they might be heads down into some code review thing, right? Well, I guess that's not the right opportunity for that. We're all going to be figuring this out together, but I think you have full like a license to just throw some questions like that around to get some ideas. If you went asking engineers to go build something without it going through any of the work stream or governance, I mean, hopefully you get some good pushback about that. But just getting ideas or asking questions and getting a sense of things, that's what the community is here for. And actually, once you have some of that together and you have some mock-ups, that would actually be a great thing to bring to engineering office hours, to these exact office hours some other week when you're ready for some of those questions. Actually, this would be the perfect venue for that.
Okay, next time.
Thanks for the question. Anybody else have a question or comment or thought? Okay. Kevin, what do you think about, we talked this morning, do you want to share a little bit about the Unchained development and where you are and what you're thinking about for next steps?
Yeah, I could just share that little document and give a brief overview and open it up to any questions and go from there.
Yeah, that'd be cool. And just so everybody knows, this is as much for the rest of the core development team as it is for anyone for the community, right? So at this point, if what happens is a dialogue starts happening between the core dev team, if anyone from the core dev team has questions, this is a great time to ask. This is not just meant to be a presentation to the outside and for community members to ask questions. Core dev members, if this is the first time you're seeing this or you have some specific questions, please bring those up here too. Cool. Kevin.
Sweet. Yeah, so I shared my screen in the Zoom, so if everyone wants to hop over there, if someone can let me know if that's sharing correctly as well.
Yep, I see it.
Sweet. Okay. So I haven't had a ton of time to work on this so far this week. There's just been a lot going on, but the goal was to get some of the things out of my head and onto paper and start collaborating with some others that have been recently helping out more with Unchained and try to get a little bit of a short-term roadmap or just some, I guess, questions and ideas down on paper. And hopefully this can spark more discussion, fill in the gaps, and then do more of a formal breakdown for upcoming tasks and creating issues. I know there's been a lot of like, how can I add to Unchained? What's next for Unchained? Like, what's the blueprint? And I agree, it's been a little bit sparse outside of like just spinning up a local development environment based on the README. So yeah, I guess there is thought and will be continued and more work going into that to try to make it easier. So we can start tapping into the community once there's like a solid blueprint kind of foundation for adding coins. Thus far, yeah, kind of I broke down a couple spikes and then just the start of maybe some tasks that we want to look into. So the biggest spike that we have for the next feature that it's kind of a requirement to add this so that we could get the full stream of data to a client, and Web v2 platform can actually function as we desire, be in parity mostly with the current platform, would be supporting WebSockets. And so the idea of WebSockets is this would not only keep a client up to date with newly confirmed and pending transactions that are associated with their addresses, but it's also a useful tool, especially based on how we set up the ingestion pipeline, to also push a stream of transaction history to a client and kind of asynchronously provide transaction history in the background via this WebSocket. So I don't know how much detail. I'm just going to kind of read through it. I guess you guys can read too, but yeah, we're using TSOA for generation of our REST API documentation, conforming to the Open API spec. I'm not sure how, if at all, like WebSocket documentation is supported for TSOA. So need to look into that. There is the idea of data consistency issues with a WebSocket. Since it's just a stream of data, how can we confirm that the user gets all transaction history that we sent to them? And then the ability, we're using RabbitMQ currently on the back end to control this ingestion pipeline. So we'll need to handle dynamic queue bindings as clients connect via WebSocket, so we could push back just their appropriate information to their client. An extra ongoing kind of question had is like, do we even want to support anything via XPubs as far as watching for a set of addresses based on an XPub? Is that too much for a backend to know about, even though we're not planning on storing this long term? I think it'll kind of also be in part like what the community wants, how they'd want to interact with that. But just to get the question down, there's also been topic of, okay, we set this up as a more of a centralized backend service. Initially, it's kind of evolved and been transitioned into this open source decentralized service. And something like RabbitMQ is probably a little bit heavier and more of a centralized kind of themed back end. So would something lighter weight like Redis and leveraging their queues work as a RabbitMQ replacement and help with size or whatever we need to more easily decentralize this Unchained backend? Not urgent. It's obviously working as it is, and we need to start delivering functionality over making more changes to how things are set up, but something to add. And then there's also been the topic of like, from a REST transaction history endpoint, do we want to have the ability to get transaction history via REST? And if we do, there's additional information that basically needs to be provided. The context is mostly around Ethereum. Blockbook does not provide internal transactions or breakdown contract parsing. And that's data that we'd ultimately like to break down for the client to be able to consume in a more easily interpretable manner. So like, how would we add that to the REST API itself? I have the kind of hidden hope we could always do a Golang rewrite and leverage programmatic concurrency at some point, but more of a joke right now. We need to keep moving forward. So yeah, and here's just some breakdown. So yeah, not gonna, I don't know, probably not worth keeping on going down. We have things like more infrastructure related. We want to have automated snapshotting and restore. So we're currently hosting a public endpoint for an API indexer and daemon. Ultimately, more people would ideally be incentivized to also host their own, but for ourselves and being kind of the primary public endpoint for all things Unchained coin stacks at this time, we want to have some attention to kind of the infrastructure side, ensuring we have ways to easily stand back up a coin stack from a snapshot if things DB gets corrupted. This will be a big one for kind of bringing on new people from the community. Highlander mentioned kind of a coin addition guideline for HT Wallet, and that would be very much a useful document to bring on new people. And it's like, this is the criteria, this is the blueprint that needs to be matched at bare minimum for a new coin. And then there most likely be very new coin specific things for that coin being added. So yeah, just to start, I guess, start a discussion if anyone has questions here, but at least wanted to bring up that we are thinking about this, are trying to get thoughts down on paper and moving towards kind of laying this out in a more orderly fashion to help answer some of the questions, fill in some gaps of missing information, etc. So I'll leave it there for now. Open it up to any questions or let people dwell on that.
Thanks for that, Kevin.
Yep.
Any questions from anyone? So, well, I'll ask a question, and it's kind of clarifying for me too. Kevin, we've talked about this before. I think, what were you saying to me, or what's the thoughts around WebSockets and then adding new coins to chain it down? Like, I think you had you in your mind there was a dependency where WebSockets were super important, so we really wanted to get most of that in before we start adding more coins. Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, good question for clarification. So basically, in my mind, WebSockets is the last main missing piece to have a fully functioning coin stack providing the relevant information a client, specifically in this case our client, would need to present the data to a user. So I was hesitant to start having too many people adding new coins or talking about how to do this, how to do that next, when we haven't really even fleshed out this last piece of WebSockets, how to manage them, how to ensure that the data is getting to the client, et cetera, et cetera. Once this piece is added, essentially Ethereum has been our focus for start. We are adding Bitcoin in parallel on the side, but I want to see Ethereum working with WebSockets, leveraging all the parsing logic that we have in the ingestion pipeline and providing accurate transaction history to a client. And that would kind of pass off to the client side at that point, where we also need to think about local storage ideas, how to store this, how to query it from the client and show what's necessary on the UI. But that would be kind of the last main missing piece on the Unchained backend side. At that point, I would consider that enough information and all of the functionality to really fill out the complete blueprint to know what is required to add a new coin stack and hopefully start parallelizing that work. Just internally, so I mentioned Bitcoin being added alongside right now. All of Bitcoin and ETH are both leveraging Blockbook for the backend indexer. Blockbook has all the other currently supported UTXOs by ShapeShift as well supported. So it'd be really easy once, ETH and Bitcoin are working with WebSockets to quickly add like your Dash, Doge, Litecoin, Digibyte, etc., and just get like a nice solid set of ETH plus UTXOs. And that opens it up to now we're starting to add Tendermint coins, which are a totally different paradigm. In Unchained, we can't leverage Blockbook as a back end. What do we need from an indexer? Can we get everything from a node? Some privacy coins further down the line, Monero, Secret, etc. It's more of a long-term vision. And I think some of that is somewhat laid out in the product roadmap that we've been working on as kind of, that long-term roadmap. So this is very much more short-term, immediate to completing, I guess, the blueprint for this being the main point for more community edition.
Cool. Appreciate that follow-up.
Yep.
Yeah, an addition guide for adding a node to Unchained, like just the node piece. That's probably a great place for somebody to start because there's no dependencies on that. The only dependency is on their blockchain, on their node, on their software. So it's essentially documenting how Pirate Chain runs their nodes. And that's been one of the big lifts always because a lot of these chains don't document very well. And even then, when they do run their nodes, they're not very stable. So like working with BNB, it was a closed source binary that we had to essentially guess and check. And it was their network was so crazy that it was entirely unstable. But a lot of that is how can you spin it up? How stable is it? What are those API calls? Documenting those, that kind of stuff. All that is stuff we do when we add an asset beforehand. And any of that teams can put together that kind of information for us, that helps us add assets long term, even without touching any code. So all that stuff is just read their docs and talk to their developers and try to use their stuff. All that's super useful for us going forward.
So
Right.
is that something that I could turn into a bounty after the fact, essentially? So is this something you guys are be willing to pay for?
An HD wallet integration done by another team, absolutely, I think is something we should be paying for. But that's stuff that we need to see what the DAO wants to prioritize. But that would be like the first step is bountying per project. And yeah, HD wallet and a Unchained node, those could be individual shippable pieces that could have separate bounties. Yep.
All right, I may get started doing that then.
Go for it. Be great. Any other questions for the team? Okay, well, we're like, I think these can be variable length going forward, and if we've got nothing else, I'm kind of inclined to just go ahead and shut this down for today. And I appreciate the people who came up and spoke, but knowing that we'll be closing this off, does that make anybody go, oh, but I really did want to ask that question? So just one more opportunity for anyone to raise your hand and come on up. Anyone from the core dev team that had anything that you wanted to share or discuss with the community, get feedback or input on or anything like that? I know we have nothing prepared. I made that caveat before, so feel free to come on up. And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to bring up Amethyst Wizard, and that's a great handle. Amethyst Wizard.
Quick question. I noticed that you had FIO addresses, and I was just curious if those are popular. Has that been going really well? Are you planning to keep it? That kind of thing.
That's anyone from the product team and been watching metrics for FIO addresses on current web? So that's beta.shapeshift.com or the mobile app.
I don't even know what kind of metrics we actually have in place. I remember when we did the FIO integration, it was under a really tight deadline because in the main part of the main motivation for doing it was a really large bounty of like millions of dollars worth of FIO tokens, basically. So that was some of the primary motivation for it. And then we always said, like, if we see a lot of demand for it, or if we see FIO take off, we can always go back in there and invest more in it. Pretty much immediately afterwards, we prioritized other features that we thought were more important than even getting that data, I guess, for FIO. Maybe we have some of it, but I'm not familiar. And but anecdotally, I think that just broadly, FIO has not yet had the type of adoption that we would hope to see that would encourage us to prioritize it higher. If anything, actually, I think we should integrate ENS names for, they're getting a lot more adoption. I think I would personally vote to prioritize ENS integration above like a more native or enhancing the FIO integration.
Oh, okay,
So-
cool.
It's worth noting that FIO's FIO's weird. You have to fetch a couple kilobytes worth of ABIs before you can interact with the chain or build transactions. It's just, from a technical perspective, it's very strange and relatively difficult to support properly.
Okay, that's helpful. And then my just last question is just about, I got an email about I think there was going to be a change to using Gem instead of Banksa. Could you talk about what that transition is going to be like, if I'm interpreting that correctly, or what's happening there?
I think that's already live. If you go to beta.shapeshift.com and you go to buy crypto, or you can even now also sell crypto, that's all now through Gem and not through Banksa.
Oh, okay.
Chow,
Cool.
correct?
So yeah, I was just
think-
using the app, so I'll give that a try.
I think you can choose. I'm double checking right now.
Oh,
but
maybe you choose.
You can choose between Gem or Banksa. There's a lot of people that have already KYC'd through Banksa, so we left that as an option. But the only way to sell crypto is through Gem. And it's also, just as a note, currently only on beta.shapeshift.com, not on the mobile app yet.
Mobile app is still only Banksa.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for the questions, Amethyst Wizard. Anything else from anyone? All right. Well, thanks everybody. We're going to do this again next week. Next week is another week without demos, so we'll plan to do it at this same time. We'll plan to do the engineering office hours in the afternoons, and the demos will be in the mornings, just to keep varying the time zone coverage. So please come back to this next week. And as always, the 11:30 on this stage every Monday is the engineering weekly kickoff, and at 10 a.m. every morning, these are all Mountain Time, in the Stand Up All Access channel is where we do our daily stand-ups on our open source repos. Thank you everybody for attending, and thanks especially to those who came up and asked some questions. Look forward to seeing y'all around.
Thank you.
Thanks all.